Well, before we start today, I'll just give a brief commercial for those that are online. Our 10-part webinar series, we added within the last week the 3 additional webinars, so they're now online. We're going to conclude our series on June 18th with John Shattle out of Colorado. And he's quite a well-known speaker, and it's going to be an interesting end to our series. And then we're going to be partnering with John and opening up our own subscription-based program around reinventing businesses and reinventing communities, and we hope to launch that in July. So we've really tried to bring a diversity of subjects to the fore over these last few weeks and equip everybody to restart the economy. So make sure you check on the latest 3 webinars that we have put up in the June timeframe. Establishing regional entrepreneurship ecosystems is I think we've established that for June 11th, and on June 4th, if I recall correctly, we're going to talk about new sector opportunities and new manufacturing opportunities. So it's 1:30. We're going to start on time as usual. For those of you that are new to our webinar series, my name is Verona Thibault. I'm pleased to manage the Saskatchewan Economic Development Alliance. We support the social and economic health of Saskatchewan communities through provision of resources and programming, consulting, education, and networking. We try to provide a space where all sectors of community can come together to work to support the sustainability of our communities as a whole. So housekeeping items today, again, please ensure your audio and video is muted throughout the call. If you have a question for our presenter today, please use the chat function and I'll try and segue it in, and if not, we can raise it at the end of the presentation. If you have trouble accessing the chat, please use my cell phone number at 1306-381 3900. You can send me a text and I'll record those questions. The webinar again will be recorded today and will be posted on our Community Resilience webinar page within 3 business days after the webinar. So I'm excited to have Carm Mikolenko with us today. I've known Carm for a number of years. Carm was appointed Executive Director of the Saskatoon Community Foundation in 2015, and she's worked over the last 4 years in building a business model to mobilize social and economic capital. Carm herself was an immigrant at age 2, and so she's very committed to building an inclusive and welcoming society. Prior to the Saskatoon Foundation, Carm worked 19 years with Affinity Credit Union, where she managed portfolios in marketing, research, sponsorship, and community giving. So welcome, Carm. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right, absolutely. No, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Verona, and to SEDA, and to all of you that are joining us this afternoon. This really gave me and our organization opportunity to really take a more intense look at the intersections of economic development, of philanthropy, of cooperative models, and how they can all work together. So I'm quite excited coming from the credit union world, as Verona has mentioned, and I really see a lot of overlap, and it's really that connection where we can get that fuel to really propel us to get past COVID. I'm going to try to sort of present this in terms of a post-COVID-19 lens. We're not sure where we're at in that, but I think as leaders in our community, it is definitely time to start looking forward. Hopefully you're not fatigued by all the Zoom meetings. So I do appreciate this platform, Verona, and bringing some folks together, some leaders in the community, to really talk more about this. There's lots that we really can learn from each other. And I know, the sun is shining today. It's been a bit better weather today in the last couple of days, and I don't know where everyone is attending from, but I do feel that sunshine brings a bit of optimism that we're all really craving right now. And it's optimism that really propels, I believe, resilience, and it's fundamental to try to achieve a stronger community, and you need that optimism. So I'm feeling it today. Hopefully many of you are as well. I know the snowbirds flew over, they're flying over many parts of Saskatchewan today. to support and salute the frontline workers or health workers. So that gave me a bit of a shot as well. I'm going to try not to be too technical in the presentation today. I do want to share some insights that I've looked at. As I said, this presentation is giving us an opportunity to really dive into where is that intersection. And we're really looking at how can, and this is something all of you probably have been experiencing and been noticing, how can, as economic development leaders and community builders, how can we pivot? How can we do things differently post COVID? And is it the time right to really do that? How can we seize that moment? I want to touch on how philanthropy is evolving in the short time that I've been involved. I see in our community foundation network, which we have 191 community foundations across Canada, and there's many others that have partnered in various ways. So that evolution of what philanthropy can do to bring wealth and retain wealth in the community, it's all for the social good and the economic gains that can be achieved that all will benefit from. It's about retaining those assets, and I'll touch a bit about that. And assets being all forms of capital and wealth that a community or a region may hold. And then just touch on how you can partner with a community foundation, whether you're interested in forming one in your own area. Our National Community Foundations of Canada certainly support any organization or any group of citizens that wish to sort of form that in their own region. And we also have been providing support. So I'll touch on that at the end as well. When I look at what's happening right now, and we're in the midst of a huge disruption, and there's an emergency response, I certainly know from our community foundation, to try to deal with COVID. I mean, our community is hurting economically, socially, psychologically. And so our effort has been focused on that response. But I also see that we have to put our eyes towards the rebuilding and the recovery of communities. And that does take a long view. You know, it's that 10-year, 20-year, 50 years from now. How can we take what's happening right now and how it's shone a light on very fundamental inequities in our society? How can we mobilize folks to really now start dealing with it? And we've all seen sort of that strong community spirit that's come out of COVID, the helping of neighbors, helping of each other. We're in this together. This is where the moment is here to really put forward a new pathway. You know, we all do feel that place and where we're from is what has made us. So your community makes you and you make your community. It's that sentiment that really can be utilized to move forward with some very innovative economic strategies in my mind. And really, this is where it's about individuals want to give where they live. And that's what's important. That's where a community foundation is very much place-based. It's very much part of a region, an area. And a lot of what needs to be done is tapping into the wealth of that area. And that means, you know, recognizing that in the next 10, 20 years, and this is something that's been talked about in the financial world for the last decade or so, and that's the intergenerational wealth transfer. You know, if we keep that in mind, knowing that wealth in your community is going to go somewhere, and people really have two options. They're either going to pay taxes or they'll leave it for their families. But the third option is that charitable framework, and that's where they can reap the benefits in knowing that they've given back to where they're from. So it's that give where you live. It's that fundamental tenet that really forms the basis of using philanthropy in addition to your own economic development strategies to really capture all the wealth in the community and look at what are the needs of that community and finding those individuals that really want to make that difference. I mean, we know that it's no longer sort of that traditional philanthropy that is happening in our community and around the world. There's a lot of engagement. So 50 years ago, the Community Foundation Saskatoon was formed. So as the proverb says, you know, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And really the second best time is now. So In 50 years, we've granted over $40 million. And that was built over time. And that went to a multitude of projects, initiatives, social, economic, educational, all various areas of focus that we've been a broad-based grantor over time. And this is the unique thing about community foundations. It really reflects the the needs of the community and how they wish to best invest to making that community stronger, to making it prosper. And we still own over 50 million in an endowment fund. So our granting will continue in perpetuity. And I think that's the fundamental, I believe, advantage in leaving that legacy. So tapping into those individuals and those community members who really feel a new, renewed sense of giving where they live, making their community stronger. And that speaks to the evolving role of philanthropy. We certainly know that it takes, if you look at sort of what's been going on in the philanthropic world, it's more than just handing out grants and providing funds or providing administrative support. We're part of really that leadership efforts is being done in a community. We're working with other sectors to convene and to collaborate. And that becomes key because it's through that mobilization that you're able really to put forward a much stronger plan with committed members to seeing that come through. And philanthropy now engages in just a wide variety of various assets, making our granting very flexible, making the investments that go back into the community could be very targeted. Again, it reflects on what the community's needs are. And that's what makes a community foundation very unique. And some innovative ways or strategies that have come about in the last number of years is the area of social finance. And that area really is one that's got a lot of potential in many communities. It's working in the field of any organization that has a social purpose. There's a economic value, but there's also social purpose. The Community Foundations of Canada Network has been recently involved in trying to support communities in getting ready for that kind of investment so that they can really retain wealth and grow wealth in their own community through a social purpose lens. And that in itself has got the economic and the social sort of outcomes that this is where the worlds intersect between the philanthropy and economic development. So this is the Social Finance Fund, which is being rolled out. It's a national program. And again, it shows the innovation that's taking place in the philanthropic world. And it is open to whether it's a profit organization or a nonprofit or a charitable organization. As a community foundation, we are required under the CRA rules to grant all our funds that come from our endowment. And I'll get into some of those tools in a moment. But those funds need to be granted to what we call a qualified donee. And qualified donee is really a registered charity. It's a municipality, an educational institution. It can be a tribal council. So there is a wide range that can be utilized to really benefit the community. It's got that flexibility. So here's where I've seen sort of the parallels. I mean, both spaces really start from what is the community's vision? What are the needs in the community that are important? What are the leaders identifying as things that they would like to address? And it's expressed through philanthropy. It's expressed through a charitable framework. So that can really be propelling the economic development strategies. And again, it looks at all forms of assets, not just the capital that's in your community, but we're talking about networks. There's capital in that. There's the social and human capital of individuals in your community. And it's bringing those capital forms of capital together and mobilizing it. And the other key component to what I would say in the philanthropic world is that it is strategically about what donors or individuals in your community wish to, what's their goals, what's their vision in terms of making their community better, giving where they live in a very strategic way, using their assets. And so it's melding those kinds of efforts and initiatives that a community foundation is focused on and carries through in their operations in order to really better the community socially or economically. And there's many financial assets. There's a lot of options that are available that we really want to ensure that people are aware. Obviously, most of you may think of community foundations as really forms of endowed funds. So currently we hold over 300 endowed funds, and those are individually based. Could be an individual, could be a family, could be even an organization. And those funds are invested. We pool them, we invest them, and then we grant a certain percentage under CRA rules. So that's the in perpetuity. That's the legacy piece that in a region, some economic gains can be gained in perpetuity by using the charitable framework of a community foundation. But the other thing that many don't realize is we also operate other financial tools, non-endowed funds. So a donor or an individual can identify what they wish to really achieve in the community and set up their own endowed fund. It's a charitable giving vehicle. The amount of funds that they put in there is fully granted, so it's not held in perpetuity. That's a very flexible option that really can drive a lot of economic development in the community. And I'll give some examples of what we've done in our own community using non-endowed funds as a vehicle for individuals or for organizations in the community. And a big part of sort of that legacy giving that we deal with all the time is working with local professionals on estate planning. It's that retention of wealth through estate planning, through gifts in a will, using other kinds of tools like life insurance and some of the advantages that come through using life insurance that is gifted through a community foundation, that is then in turn utilized and invested in the community as identified by the donor's wishes. And appreciated stocks. That is a huge fundamental benefit for individuals to engage in their own philanthropy by using appreciated stocks. So that gives you a bit of a range of the various tools that are available to that can in turn be turned into investments, whether it be grants or other forms into a community. And as I mentioned, a big piece of that is that legacy gift planning, knowing that there will be that intergenerational wealth transfer. A big part of that can be leaving gifts to the community. So that is an area that we work with all the time, whether it's through other professionals, their lawyers, the accountants, the estate planners, and ensuring that those legacies continue on. And another tool that you likely have your own form of mobilizing a community, and this is unique to community foundations, and it's called our Vital Signs program. And across Canada, many have engaged in this. And what this is a snapshot of a variety of indicators and data points about a region or a community. And it really presents the information in a way that uses not just StatsCan data, but there's also locally sourced and derived data to really inform our community about some of the inequities. And that inform will hopefully move them to action and move them into change. And it's the collective impact of really using the Vital Signs tool as a way to demonstrate what are the needs of the community and mobilizing that action. And we've seen many examples of that throughout Canada in terms of how Vital Signs has become, as an internationally respected tool, very critical in order to move the needle on some very, very specific data-based economic and social indicators of a community. So just to give you examples of things that we've done at the Saskatoon Community Foundation, now there's a few. There's the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation out of Regina. They have a larger geographic mandate. There's also PA Community Foundation, North Battleford, and there's a few others in the province. We've supported the Yorkton Community Foundation in the last number of years. They wanted to set up their own, and they've mobilized local leaders to try to do that. They've applied for a charitable registration, and they've received that. But what we're doing to support that is to really take care of some of those investment decisions that you really need the governance, you need the expertise. And that's something we offer, whether it's other community foundations or it could be other charities. We will offer that kind of support if they wish to set up their own endowed fund. Or it can be a fund that we just simply manage. Those assets are owned by the foundation, and we are simply managing from an investment perspective. So that's a very unique way that we can sort of use our assets and our expertise to help other communities across the province. We have another foundation that has utilized us for the same thing, and that's out of Langenburg. So they've created their own fund with us so that they can then use the grants that come from those funds and put it into, use those resources and put it into the various needs of a community. Again, it's very tailored, it's place based to where your region is, and it really can become another critical tool to really enhance the quality of life, whether it's on an economic level or social level. And I think that's what really, really looking at is not viewing in a traditional sense, sort of the philanthropic lens or the economic development lens, where you think of attracting business and growing business. But there are ways that that intersection can then be partnered in a way that really can strengthen and ensure that the community is prosperous. And I think that's the key thing. We've done a couple of other very unique partnerships where a group of individuals in our community wanted to revamp the Gordie Howe Sports Complex. And prior to them being able to form their own foundation, they utilized us to do a non-endowed fund where individuals were donating to the complex and the refurbishment there, and they were receiving their taxable receipt. And at the end of the day, through a charitable framework, they were able to really revitalize the Gordie Howe Sports Complex. It was one of the largest sort of initiatives that we've undertaken, and that was a number of years ago. They have formed their own foundation now, and they still utilize us for some of their financial needs. So again, there's a continued partnership, even if an organization or a community does set up its own foundation. Optimus Hill is also another example, and that's the toboggan and I guess ski spot in Saskatoon, where again, local Optimus Club wanted to improve the facilities there, and it's a city owned park. So through the city being a qualified donee, again, it's that partnership approach. We were able to provide that charitable framework to support their goal, and that was to refurbish the and expand the offerings from that park. So again, another very unique example where we used a non-endowed tool and vehicle to really support development of a community and some of the resources that it's needing. So, and those are just a small sample of examples. There's other parts of Canada that have really done a lot of partnerships with community foundations. A good example would be even out of Manitoba, the Winnipeg Community Foundation there, which is one of the oldest and one of the largest across Canada. They also offer what they call their back office sort of investment and administration services to a number of smaller regional based community foundations across Manitoba. So they have become that whole investment and financial arm for them. So the communities can really worry about what are the needs of the community, what are those drivers that they can focus on in order to really prosper and strengthen their community, removing a lot of those issues that really it does take a great amount of effort and heavy lifting to set up a community foundation. And one of the things that we've been working towards is really helping other communities incubate with us. They can leverage our expertise. We can be what I would call that turnkey partner and provide a lot of those services to make it work for you. You can create your own local fund with us. It really would operate, just like a community foundation. But the beauty is you're not being concerned about admin work or legal work. So community foundations can really be another investment vehicle for the growth and prosperity of a community. It's using a charitable framework, but it's become very flexible because you can, in fact, partner with qualified donees. Again, it's municipalities or any governing type body. It could be a tribal council, an educational institution. So there is a wide range and efforts that can be done as partners under a community foundation framework. So really to sort of, wrap up, this is how I would put, I guess, some next steps, if it's helpful for you, is really to seek some seed funding from a donor, from someone who really believes in strengthening the community as a donor, but also as an economic development sort of initiative. And that's the partnering that really becomes critical, where you're gathering those community leaders and mobilizing them, identifying what are the specific, using research tools, what are the specific initiatives that you want to tackle, and that's what mobilizes individuals to really support that. And doing the research with other community foundations, partnering so that you can really, enact a very strong, robust development program without having to really be concerned about any administration or investment. At the end of the day, individuals do feel good about giving where they live. They feel great that they've been able to leave a legacy. It becomes a permanent legacy, and they know they've done it as part of a community effort. So I think those are some of the next steps, to try to, put a bit of a path in front of you where you can now look at the philanthropic space and look at the economic development space, build that resilience through stronger partnerships. And there is a network to do that with community foundations across Canada. So I'm just gonna, wrap up with one of our sayings that we like to say, and that's, when you're part of something bigger, your story never ends. And that's the legacy piece that many communities want to, if you're able to offer that through a partnership with a community foundation, you will attract those funds, you will attract the wealth, it will be retained in your area. It won't leave to other family members that are likely outside of your region if you come from a rural area. So it's that whole retention through philanthropy of the wealth that is in our communities. It may not be the ideal time to really have those conversations, but I do think that the mindset of individuals of really believing that together we are stronger, and while we can see COVID as a storm that we're all in, there are different boats in that storm. And I think that's the important piece, is that there are individuals who do have the capacity to support strong economic and social contributions to their community. And enabling them through other vehicles really is a pathway forward out of COVID, and bringing us forward. It's that looking forward 10, 20, 50 years down the road and leaving that legacy.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl. Yes.
I
I
I seem to be
seem to be
echoing here,
echoing here.
Logan.
Logan,
Is it me?
you're sounding fine to me.
Is that
Is
right?
that
Okay.
right? Mm-hmm.
I want to
I want
raise
to
a
raise
few
a few
points.
points.
The
The
First of all, I
First of
put
all, I
out a
put out a
stat
stat
earlier
earlier
this
this
week about the
about
number
the
of
number of
households in
households in
Canada
Canada
that are
that
going
are going
to
to
be
be
increasing
increasing
their
their
assets
assets
to over
to
1
over
million
1 million
by
by
2030.
2030.
So I think there is, yes, I'm receiving a comment that I am echoing. So I think Logan's helping out. I sound a lot better. Great. Okay, so again, there are an estimated 78%, an increase in 78% of our Canadian households that are going to have over 1 million in assets over the next 10 years. So I do feel that it's important for communities to be looking at how can we retain that. I read another report this week as well, a 2018 Canada Helps organization issued a charitable giving report, and it indicated that there is an overall decline in charitable donations across all age groups, with the exception of those aged 55 and over. Those are increasing. So I think for communities and representing the organizations within their community-based municipality, I really feel that a charitable vehicle is something that they need to be looking at. Now, could we talk a bit more about the endowment and non-endowment? Now, some folks will say that because municipalities have charitable status, that an individual or a family who wishes to donate could just donate to the municipality. But it's not an arm's length institution, right? I don't see that municipalities would set up endowment funds. So endowment fund is where there's a donation, and that donation, the interest is given out year over year. Now, that family or individual could put a name to the endowment. It could be the Mason Endowment for Community Economic Development, correct? Is that how it would roll?
Sorry, Carm, you'll need to unmute yourself.
How's that?
Good.
Oh, okay. I'll make a couple of comments if I can now, Verona.
Yes.
Oh, it's
Yes.
still unmuting, it says. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Those are tough conversations to have when you're talking about money and you're talking about families and the transfer of wealth. Those are conversations we have on a regular basis with individuals or with some of those professionals that I mentioned. And that's some of the expertise that we can lend communities. We can provide some of that education. And, now that we're all very comfortable with working with video conferencing, that could be something that can be easily delivered in any part of, anywhere. So it's those tough conversations, but it's all things that are being thought of now because and you're quite right. I've heard various numbers on in terms of wealth transfer. It is happening now. And I think the sooner communities can have conversations with those in their community about options, then those will be considered factors for them when they're planning their estate plan and what have you. So I think that's an important, while difficult, it's a conversation that needs to be had. The other part about some of the information around Canada Helps and whatnot, I think what you're finding is that there's a whole online platform called GoFundMe, and that's a person-to-person type of. There are some very distinct differences between the two, and every community foundation will sort of explain that to you, but that's the business we're in. If you have a municipality or even some of the charities that are trying to set up endowed funds, there's a lot of financial oversight, investment governance that needs to go into the whole managing of an endowment. That whole in perpetuity is a very unique way of managing funds. So we offer that expertise to communities, and it's something that shouldn't be taken lightly in that it can be easily done. So we offer that expertise. The non-endowed route is a very easy vehicle to just so create a pool of funds that you can distribute entirely towards your particular project or initiative, as long as there's a partner that is a qualified donee that is part of that initiative. So either way, there needs to be a qualified donee in the receipt of the grant or the funds from the two different vehicles. And yeah, the beauty of endowed funds is that the legacy is that you can put your name on it, and that will be in perpetuity. It's a permanent legacy of a family or an individual that has created a fund for a cause or a community that's important to them.
Okay, thanks, Carm. Now, Jennifer Brooks in Humble has a question. She's indicating the mobilization of capital to be used for local means is exciting. In your opinion, what minimum dollar level makes sense for groups to consider raising if they're considering partnering with the community foundation?
You can start, we make it very accessible to start small, to really receive any significant benefit in terms of the investment back to the community. Keep in mind it's 3.5% that we do give back off of the investment of the endowment. So our goal is to achieve at least 5 and a bit percent. We're in a totally different investment environment right now than we were even 5-10 years ago. And so our goal is to achieve that. We're averaging over 7% return. So 3.5 goes back to, was granted out, and that goes back to the community. So keep that in mind when you're looking at initiatives. Set your sight on what would be the amount that you would wish to be given back to the community, what grant stream you would want for your project or initiative that would really make it viable, and work it that way. That becomes the goal of your fund, whether it's 10 million or what have you, so that it can be sustainable.
Okay, thanks, Carm. So if I understand it correctly, there's two ways a community or an organization with a community can partner, so or engage in charitable giving through a foundation. They can start their own, which means they need to register as a charitable organization and go through quite a long process with Canada Revenue Service to get that charitable status. But in the meantime, they could jumpstart it right away by having you represent them, and they could probably get up and running within a couple of weeks, I suspect.
We're
Correct.
ready when an organization or individuals are ready. It really is about the appetite in the community to really move forward. Yorkton has just gone through this where they gathered, some local leaders and community and business individuals to really set this up. They have gone forward to get their own charitable status, but it has taken, it does take some heavy, heavy lifting. So absolutely, we're there to, I call it incubate, so that we can set up a fund or a structure that works for the intent of what you're trying to achieve in your community. So we customize it, and I think that's what we've been doing, whether it's an individual or a community. We would customize what would be the needs of your community and then offer that as the option for you.
Okay, so that's option number one. Then option number two is the organization or community does not even have to engage in that process. They can just partner with you and as the community foundation umbrella and fundraise that way. So that sounds like two really expedient ways of starting to raise money quickly. So I do want to highlight too for those that are participating, because there's not a lot of community foundations that really dive into the economic development space, in my observation in Canada. But CRA guidelines are very clear that, and it's a good time right now in this time of economic deprivation. The CRA guidelines really support initiatives, for example, microloans. If you wanted to do lending in your community to business, this is a perfect fit with CRA guidelines for community economic development. They also encompass areas such as training, working to address underemployment, even building and land leasing are all eligible under the CRA guidelines. So it is really quite broad, and a bit of a mystery to me why we haven't gone down this road. But I can speak from with some authority that the Saskatoon Foundation is very progressive in this area, and I do feel it's an opportunity for communities to be considering. I just want to put it out to our attendees again, if there's any more questions before we wrap up today. I think we've highlighted the opportunity. Certainly, I have my CRA guidelines in front of me, and they're very accessible through the Government of Canada website for those who really want to explore this a bit more. Carm, I want to let Carm off the line a bit early today. She's been engaged working with vulnerable populations here in Saskatoon, part of 30 organizations that have come together, trying to address some of the inequities that have resulted from the COVID situation. So I know she has another meeting coming up at 2:30, and it doesn't seem like there's any other questions. So I'm going to wrap with a thank you for those that have attended. A reminder that our next webinar next week is on Thursday at the same time, 1:30 Central Standard Time, and it's going to be focused on tourism and what economic recovery might look like in that sector. Our guests next week will be Grant McDonald with the Canadian Sports Alliance, and our very own Jonathan Potts of Tourism Saskatchewan. So we look forward to chatting with you next week. Thanks again, Carm.
Thank you.
Have a great May long, and stay safe, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. All the same to you. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.